Which one should I recommend for mainly shooting video? Would it be the OnePlus 9 or the OnePlus 9 Pro? Well, I would personally recommend the Pro just because of one thing. It has 4K 120. I'll be showing you guys side-by-side comparisons, and I'm shooting this whole video with just these two phones. What are the differences between the two? Well, the Pro version does have 4K 120, the main sensor, the main camera sensor is updated, and it does have optical stabilization, as well as the telephoto lens, but it doesn't really matter for video because it uses the main camera. Alright, let's take a look at my favorite feature, the 4K 120. So you've seen 4K 120 in action, and obviously it's pretty cool. You can speed ramp it, you can slow it down, and for those videographers out there, they know how to take advantage of this, so it's going to be useful for them. But for those casual users, they most likely don't know how to do anything with 4K 120, so they're probably not going to use this mode. One thing to take note of when shooting in 4K 120 is that it's not stabilized. So I wouldn't do too much walking or try to ninja walk the best as you can, because in post you can slow it down and stabilize it, which does help. But if you want the smoothest footage, you have to put this on a gimbal. One thing to take note, you are limited to 5 minutes per clip, so you do have to plan things out, but I think 5 minutes is a lot of time. So that is 4K 120, let's move on to regular 4K. So the differences in 4K 30 is very small. It seems like the biggest one that stands out to me is the shadows. On the regular 9 is darker, is contrastier, and a bit more harsh. The midtones are slightly green as well. On the 9 Pro, when you walk into the shadows, it quickly turns blue. It's not as crazy as iPhones, which usually just stays at blue forever, but on the 9 Pro, it just slowly goes back to a natural and neutral looking color. For the stabilization, they both look really similar, so I don't know if the new sensor on the 9 Pro really helps with that department. Moving on to 4K 60, the stabilization is not as good as 4K 30. The difference here again are the colors. I do notice that on the Pro, the sky is more vibrant, same with the grass, the wood, or the trees, even the floor. It has that warm look from the sun. On the 9, it looks very cool. For the ultra-wide lens, they both have the same sensors, so everything is pretty much the same. The colors, the stabilization, all that, which is pretty much accurate from this comparison. I realized on the 9 Pro, the mics have some sort of wind reduction, so hear this out.
Okay, 60 ultra wide. Okay, 60 ultra wide.
So yeah, if you're in windy situations, the 9 Pro does blocks out the wind better. Anyways, in 4K 60 ultra wide, everything still looks the same to me. These phones can shoot up to 8K 30, but everything about it, the colors and all that, is pretty similar to 4K 60, where the Pro version has the better colors, is more saturated, and is more vibrant. I wouldn't really recommend people using 8K 30, especially if you're gonna edit, because you need a really good computer. My MacBook M1 right now is struggling, it's laggy, so Final Cut is not liking 8K right now. In video, there is a mode called Super Stable Mode, which is great when you're doing more extreme stuff like skateboarding, snowboarding, or even running. The highest resolution you can shoot is 4K 30, which is really good, and I don't really see a difference between the two, which makes sense because they are both using the ultra-wide sensor. The next mode is Video Portrait Mode, which gives off that blurry background. For the most part, the cutout is pretty good. If you take a look at my right side of the face, it has trouble cutting out my glasses, and sometimes it blends into my mask. It doesn't work on the front-facing camera, only on the back ones, and the max resolution is 1080p 30. The last mode is NightScape mode, which works for low light, but honestly, I don't see a huge difference. The sky is a bit brighter and maybe a little bit cleaner, but that's about it. The max resolution on this mode is 1080p 30, so I also shot in 1080p 30 and 4K 30 to see if there's any big differences. There are some, but not big enough for me to use this mode. Now 4K 30 in low light, the differences here are pretty clear. As you can tell, looking at the ground, the colors are more natural or more true to life on the Pro. On the 9, it still got that green yellowish hue, which doesn't really look that good. The stabilization is still really similar to each other, but the big clear winner here for clarity is the Pro. You can barely tell that there's any micro jitters compared to the regular 9. For ultra wide, it's obvious that the quality will look the same, but I wouldn't recommend using this in low light because there's a lot more micro jitters. It's not as clean or clear as the regular lens. The front camera does not look good during low light, so I would avoid it, and the max resolution on this is at 1080p, which is kind of disappointing for me because with the same price, you can buy something from Apple or Samsung that can shoot up to 4K 60. During daytime, I wish it just has better HDR because for the most part, everything is exposed except for the background. That thing is really overblown, so it just doesn't look too good. In the end, if you do find yourself shooting a lot more video or you're planning to, then the 9 Pro will be the better one. And mainly because it's the flexibility of having 4K 120. If you don't think you'll be needing that feature, then the OnePlus 9 would be just fine. I think the video portrait and NightScape mode is just something to play around with. Honestly, I would just stick with 4K and don't even touch anything else. If you're mainly shooting photos and a little bit of video here and there, then I would recommend the regular 9 because you won't be missing out too much. One big con that I mentioned in my other video is that these phones, they don't connect to any of my external microphones. So if you're a vlogger or if you just want better audio, then these may be a big turnoff. And that is my video comparison between the OnePlus 9 and the OnePlus 9 Pro. I do have a separate video for photography only, and I have another one where I spent a whole day in New York City with the Pro. Don't forget to give me a like, and you can find me on Instagram. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.